Hey guys, welcome back to the show. The E24 LT1 swap right behind me is going swimmingly. Making good progress. In fact, what we're going to be doing today is we'll be starting to remove all the masking. We're going to start prepping this LT1 for install, and we're going to start painting all of those engine bay parts, the brake parts, and everything like that that we need in order to get this thing fully installed. And we're really on the verge of final assembly and getting this thing sitting on the ground, getting the steering wheel to work with the steering column and the rack and everything else like that. This episode is going to be a big one. We're going to be doing a lot of final assembly. The car is going to start coming together. Stand by, guys. So there you go. There it is. Go slow here so you guys can see. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it feels so smooth. And yeah, you can see that, like old, new, old, new, old, new. Just for shits and giggles, let me wet sand this and then buff it and see how well it matches to the new paint. Not bad. After polishing it up, it kind of made it a little bit darker, made the black come through a little bit. This is, I think, a single stage because I started wet sanding and I actually got black paint coming off, so I have to be very, very careful about not going through. But even though it does look closer to that. Yeah, back to it. Let's talk now about parts that I need to paint before I reinstall them, primarily brake components. All of this stuff on this side of the car needs to be pre-installed before the engine goes in, because there's no way that I'm going to be able to get all that stuff installed after the engine is in. So let's talk about those parts that need to be painted and what color we're going to be painting them. Okay, I think that's about it. Yeah, so as you remember from an old episode, I actually completed the steering column already with the two U-joints in there. So this has already been painted and detailed, so that's good. The front sway bar is all complete as well, so no work needed there. This is what needs to be painted. The brake booster carrier will be painted aluminum or silver. These trim pieces are going to be painted the SEM trim black, and then all of these pieces here, a couple brake components, and of course the engine brackets that bolt onto the actual LT1 are all going to be painted the black engine bay black, basically. Not Schwartz, but it'll be like an engine paint, so it'll be pretty robust. Yeah, so there's also other little pieces of hardware that I need to refurbish and paint, but that's all going to come as it's needed. Next day, we're ready to start painting some of these E24 parts. Now, I'm running out of room in this garage, if you could probably tell. Even with 3 cars, I still don't have enough room to do everything that I need to do in this garage to make my channel better for you. But what I am going to do is I'm going to paint these parts underneath a car while it's on the lift. That way, at least the paint isn't falling on anything that I don't want it to fall on and create a dusty atmosphere. And that is right under the E30. Let's hang up those parts and let's start spraying. Like a homemade paint booth that I've made underneath my car. Welding wire is very strong, it's very taut, and it's very cheap. While that's drying under the E30, you can see that we've got our brackets, our LT1 brackets, completely painted. And as you can see, I actually stamped them. So that way I know which one's passenger, which one's driver. That one's P for passenger, and this one is D for driver. That way I know exactly which one goes where. And they are going to be a little bit different. That's why I wanted to make sure that I labeled them. And that goes right on the subframe. So we're going to take the subframe, we're going to install it onto the engine. We're going to put the engine down on this rolling rack, and we're going to be able to roll the rack around, and we're going to get rid of this engine hoist. It's going to free up a little bit of space in the shop. So now the LT1 is sitting here rolling around on its little roller, and all we need to do is just roll it under the car, bring the car down, and attach the engine to it. But before we do that, we need to check our paint stuff and then install a lot of that stuff into the car. Now, along the frame rails, it's going to be really, really tight for installing stuff. So that's why we need to do as much installation on the car before the engine goes in. There's a very specific order of operations that needs to happen with installing this. And basically, for the owner of this car, if you ever wanted to remove things in that order, you just need to watch this video basically backwards. And installation is reverse of removal. So please take note. But before we do that, we need to take a look at those painted parts and see how they look. To reroute the entire harness for the engine bay, and basically what we did was we reskinned it. We took all of the harness and basically skinned it with a new type of cloth tape, which I loved using this cloth tape. It was just incredible, and you can see how clean this harness is now. I'll show you some befores and afters. Take a look here, and you'll see that the harness before was in really bad shape, and we ended up just taping up exactly where the old harness was with the new tape, and it turned out to be really, really nice. So what we're going to do is take this harness and we're going to route it back down and around and through to everything that it needs to go to before we start putting things back in. The harness is routed. I did a couple zip ties here, here, and here. It goes across, it goes, you can see I got basically all of my, I got my horn and my headlights, my turn signals. Basically everything's been routed and moved where it belongs. I've got some items here that I'm not really gonna, probably not reuse, like E-fan type stuff that we're gonna be reusing. And this, of course, is for the wiper and the washer and stuff like that needs to get routed back up. But everything, this is going to get very crowded very fast, so I have to be really careful about how I organize it. And you can see around here as well, I've got my headlights here, turn signal, the power wire. This guy here is the power wire that I made for the fuse box. This basically provides all positive battery power to the fuse box. The switched power that's coming from the key through this C101 port is part of the engine harness, and that's going to end up getting snaked around in here, probably through back here or something. So that's the switched power to the DME, and everything else is going to be coming from there. But remember, the battery is coming from over here. This is the batteries in the back. It's going to be coming through here and going to the battery terminal, where it's then going to hook up to the fuse box wire that I'm connecting to it. So that's all going to get connected in that respect. Now that that's all kind of done and set up, don't worry about any of that. I'm going to end up cleaning all that up later on down the road. I just want to get everything installed. So now, let's start installing a lot of the brake stuff that I had painted, and let's get the Dynamat installed. Actually, it's called Keel Mat is what we're going to be using in this application. It's an 80 mil sound deadening material that basically adheres, it sticks onto the firewall of the E24, and it makes a nice aluminum kind of like covering. What you need when you do this is the Keel Mat, right? And it comes in a whole bunch of sheets depending on what you get. I got them on Amazon. Link is down in the description. This is the KLM 8036, which is basically 80 mil and 36 square feet, which is way more than enough to fill the need for this small firewall. So I'm actually going to be putting some inside the car too, specifically around the transmission tunnel. But what these things basically are, it's like a Dynamat, which is more the brand name for this stuff. And essentially what it is it's an adhesive backed, so this is actually an adhesive on the back of that requires a little bit of heat in order for it to fully activate, and you need a roller in order to roll it through. Now the telltale sign when you're rolling, the best way to ensure that you have full adhesion onto the car is when you roll this, you actually are removing all these little crinkles in the aluminum side of the mat, ensuring that you have a full, good, tight bond between the car body and this. Now remember, when you're doing this, you need to have a very, very clean surface. In our case, we have a fully repainted and clear coated surface, so it's gonna be very easy for us to get really good adhesion onto this material. So let's take this, let's start making measurements and start getting that installed. All right, you get the gist. Let's just show you the final result. And here it is. Now let's install some brake components. Now before we go too forward with reinstalling the HVAC system on top of the trans tunnel, you want to take into account these two air conditioning lines. Now those lines are dirty and they need to be cleaned, and you can easily clean them with one of these guys, which we will do. But you will also notice that they had the old black O-rings on there. And those black O-rings are for the R14 refrigerant. We need to replace those with the green ones, which is meant for the R134A. All of the O-rings in the entire air conditioning system need to be replaced to R134A. So we're going to give this a quick clean. We'll install the O-rings, and then we can start working on the HVAC. All right, so unfortunately we cannot install the HVAC system because this is a recirculating flap setup here that goes all the way up inside of there. And it's got these little flappers here that kind of sit inside of here like that. And as you can see, there's like these little nubs right there. One of them's there and the other one here is not there. So basically it cannot freely rotate. It kind of hinges only on one and it gets binded up. So actually both of these guys had those pins broken, and we need to replace both of these. So I'm gonna have to take a look for that. But in the meantime, we won't be able to do the HVAC system right now, but we did get the pedal assembly and the steering column all set. So now we can go back into the engine bay and start working on the rest of the brake components. But let's shift gears with a short interlude. So I don't think I need to explain this. The more sound deadening we have, the better, and that's kind of what this is for. What's going to happen is we need to install the shifter before we install the entire drivetrain. So this thing is going to basically compress into the transmission tunnel and create a really nice sound barrier for the car. And we've got everything basically installed and lubed up, and this is just going to come right through. Let me see, is this in? There we go. Now it's in neutral here. And shifts really nice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it's reverse. While I'm going off on this tangent of LT1 stuff, one other thing I wanted to bring up was that I do need to install the clutch line into the TR6060 before we get this thing installed. Bleeding this will be really difficult, but we have a solution, and that is a remote bleeder. The bleeder comes out of here. I need to screw the remote bleeder in, which is essentially another AN4 stainless steel line that allows it to snake up into a convenient location in the engine bay for you to essentially keep it unlocked, pump the pedal a few times until you feel some good pressure, and then close it up. Without that, it would be almost impossible to get a wrench in here with a hose off of the end of it in order to bleed it. So the way that this works is that this guy comes from the master cylinder. It's going to snake up and over the transmission, and then this guy is going to slip right in there with a little pin that keeps it in place. Pretty easy. So I think I mentioned this like 6 times, but yeah, let's do some more brake components. And for good measure, we put in the clutch master reservoir, which is basically a completely closed system now, except for the output of the clutch is going to end up going down and into the TR6060 transmission, which will be probably right around there. And that just about does it for this episode, guys. We got a lot done today. We did a lot of final assembly just getting started, and we actually have a lot more to do before we can get the engine in, which will be in the next episode. So guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you learned something. My name is Frank Macaluso from Garageaholic, and we are doing some really good work here. Tell your friends, tell everybody you know, like, subscribe, and comment down below, guys. Take it easy. Later.